Hello, everybody. Paul Weber here. We're just trying to get everything working for you today in our little chat about aviation in Ottawa. And it's the first time I've tried this, so things may go horribly off the rails, but it'll be a learning experience one way or another. I hope some of you are starting to join us, I think. And we're broadcasting out on YouTube and on my Facebook page. So if you go to Paul Weber Facebook, the music page, you should be able to see this video playing. And on my YouTube channel. And if you're not seeing it in either place, well, then I screwed up. It's all on me. Actually, I should blame my friend Andre, but I don't pay him enough for that. So I'm just going to start rambling on. And it sounds like we are live on Facebook and YouTube, which is great. And thanks for joining us. If you're joining us live, I believe you do have the option to provide comments and send a question, which we'll see at our end. So feel free to do that at any point if you did have a question as we go through this topic. And as we lead up to the new video from the Paul Weber Band about a guy named Cecil Peoli. By the time you leave this stream today, you will know who Cecil Peoli is, and you'll be experts in aviation. Well, maybe not experts, but you'll know more than most people in Ottawa. So I wanted to start by talking a little bit about why I wrote this song about an early aviator, or aeronaut, as they were frequently referred to. Oh, I'm being told that I look good. Well, that always counts for something. It's the hat, I think, that helps. So yeah, I live in Old Ottawa East, and during COVID, I started walking around with nothing to do and reading plaques everywhere. And one of the plaques that I came across was on a power station on Riverdale here in Old Ottawa East. And I read this plaque, and it was about the first people who landed planes in what was effectively a cow pasture in the 1910s. I think it's 1911. The struggles they had with these planes that were like very light, very flimsy. And I thought, well, that's interesting. These planes landed right by my house. And then I heard, courtesy of Dave O'Malley, the story of Cecil Peoli. Dave's going to be joining us in a little bit, but Cecil Peoli was a very young fellow, and he's got a kind of an interesting backstory. He wasn't the first person to fly into Ottawa, but he was perhaps the most intriguing in some ways, partly because of his age. And so I was taken with that story, and I ended up making a little video about that experience of coming across that plaque. And I was out walking today in my neighborhood near a power station that we have at Riverdale and Main Street. This power station is where there was once a cow pasture called Slattery's Field, which is the site of two of Canada's most historic aviation events. In fact, in September 1911, pilot Lee Hammond flew his biplane and performed for crowds as part of the Central Canada exhibition, both taking off and landing from Slattery's Field. And later on, in October 1913, pilot William Robinson, after taking off from Montreal, landed his biplane in Slattery's Field. There's a plaque on the side of the building from the Canadian Aviation Historical Society that notes that both pilots had to contend with cows and horses, which shared the crude airfield. So the next time you're in this area, remember where the first airplanes landed in Ottawa.
Those magnificent men in their flying machines, they go up to the up, they go down to the down.
All right. So that was the little video I made of that plaque that I was talking about. In fact, I'm going to give you, if anybody is interested in this, a little link to all of my Ottawa walks videos. And I'm not even exactly sure how this will work, but I'm putting in the comments section the link to the video. Now, no one's going to actually type that in, so I will include that video in the final format of this video when I post it. But it's all of my Ottawa walks. There's about 20 of them, and they cover many different stories about trains and underage drinking and different locations around Ottawa that you might find interesting. It was interesting during COVID to make those stories. So there's the inspiration, and then reading some of the stuff online, like David O'Malley's stories about the early aviators. So I wrote the song. Cecil Peoli, one of the early people, I think he was like 19 when he did his flight into Ottawa, but he started at 17. Dave's going to tell us more about Cecil now quite soon. But I wanted to talk about then writing this song and then thinking, okay, let's make a video of the song. And the reason I wanted to do a video was because when the band started playing the song, it became apparent really soon. And I started the song more as a Paul Weber solo with some people backing me up. And then we started playing this song and went, this sounds like a band. Suddenly we went from being Paul Weber with some backup musicians to Paul Weber having a band. And I thought, wow, we should make a video of that. But who could I con into working with me on a video like this? And I have a good friend, Andre Bouchbard, who agreed to work with me. And I have him here today with us. Andre, do you want to say hello to everybody? Whoop, now you suddenly disappeared. Am I switching over to the other camera? This one? That
That's
one?
the one.
Same year?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's get
Okay,
let me
you
get
can
rid
delete
of
the
the other one.
questions one. Yes.
Remove.
So,
There we go. Andre Bouchard, tell us about yourself and how you got involved in this crazy project of mine.
well, um, I'm a songwriter myself, so I know the fun we have in telling stories. And when you talked to me about that project, I listened to the song and I immediately saw interesting images we could do to support that. Um, I have an advertising background, so I work a lot with video tools. I'm not an historian in any way, but I try uh, to amplify the words that were already there, especially the dream sequence. You'll recognize it
Yeah.
when you see it. In order to really serve the story of that guy, which I didn't know, and that's the merit of what you're doing. We are discovering so much things about Ottawa, about the history of the town. I'm not from the town, and I'm discovering my new home through your songs. So it's really fun for me to contribute to this work in discovering myself, the town, through video to support your songs. And it's been really fun to do, even if it's kind of a shoestring production in terms of what we are using. Um, the tools we have at our disposal now to make video are so close to professional that we can still come up with things that are really that look professional, even if we haven't hired a special team of special effects guy and So it was really fun to do. I tried also to use um, artifacts or documentation that was about the time of the song. So, for example, the plane, I'm not a 3D modelist, but I found a plane, which was the Wright brothers, actually. I found a 3D model of that I could kind of modify so it looks a little more like the original Cecil Peoli plane. Same for a map of Ottawa that I used to simulate here's the flight over the city, which is an old map, but probably not for that year specifically. But it's enough to sell the feeling of the song, which is as you will see and hear surtout very well done and very pleasing to the ears, and I hope the video will be pleasing to the eyes.
It was neat to see what you came up with. And what did you think of working with the talent?
Yes, we had a last minute call, and he was really kind to participate. We had a super comedian named Cameron Weber. You,
Right. C'est mon fils.
yeah,
Yeah, we
you'll
talked my
see
son
you'll
into
see the
appearing in the
link.
video.
And
Yeah.
we just bricolé, as we say in French. We just came up with little green screens, just enough to cover what we needed. To I know that previously you shown in your Facebook page a photo of you with a big fan trying to blow wind in
Yeah.
Cameron's face in front of the green screen.
He
So
usually blows wind in my face, so I wanted to turn the tables.
So when I say shoestring production, that's what it was.
Yeah.
But once again, when you see the final product, I think it holds well. And I'm
Thank.
happy that Cameron participated. You had fun doing that.
Yeah, he did, I think. And this isn't the first video we've made together, is it?
No, we've done Ottawa Lament, which was the video by which I discovered the city. I was in town only for years, less than a year, and we've met through a Facebook, through a songwriter group by Hello Northeastern
Right.
that
North.
was
Yeah.
hosting this group. We met through that, and made me the occasion to try to put images on this song, which basically says Ottawa, my Ottawa doesn't suck. And for the rest, the we also did another one. I think I don't recall. Actually, yes, you've done a big show in the
Yeah. Of
Redbird, and
course. Yeah.
I've done the video captation with a small team, which we called John. I don't remember the name, but really a couple of guys who were really useful for the camera stuff. But I did all the editing after that. So I'm becoming. I think I have my staff badge one day.
It's like a whole career now for you, I think. You can
Yes,
retire earlier.
yeah, but I- I've worked 30 years in advertising, so always uh, putting efforts in other people's projects or products or ideas. So I'm drilled for that to be at service of stories of different projects. So uh, for the last 8 years, I've turned my career around because I moved to Ottawa to get married. So it's hard to work in advertising at my age in new places. So I became a civil servant for the federal government. But in by night, I put a cape on, and I'm still an ad and a video guy.
And I'm very glad that you are. I want to thank you again for participating, and I'm going to bring you back into the wings. If I can figure out which button I do. There we go. There's just me. Again, thank you to Andre for joining us today. I feel like I'm on CBC TV here. It's kind of interesting doing this. I will mention that we're always hoping to do more of this kind of thing. And whoops. But it does cost money and time. If anybody wants to help us out, I have, it's called Buy Me a Coffee /Paul Weber, and you can buy me a coffee. Well, not a real coffee, actually. Just donate a few dollars to help us to, cover the costs associated with making these videos with local stories, with local history, and any donations would be very welcome. So let's move on. We're getting towards actually showing the video, but before we get there, we wanted to talk a bit about the history surrounding the story of Cecil Peoli. So I'm going to bring on David O'Malley, who is, you don't want me to call you an expert, but let's just say you know a lot more than I do about the topic of the early aviators. What would you like to start with in terms of telling us about these crazy young men and their flying machines?
Well, first of all, I'll just tell you about my background. I'm a graphic designer, and like Andre, I've been in advertising, but a lot longer than him, 50 years as a graphist, graphic designer. And my company is called Aerographics because I always wanted to see if I could get work in the world, graphic design work in the world of aviation. And that's kind of slowly over many years it progressed that about 80% of what I do is related to aviation, aircraft paint schemes. I work in vintage aviation at an organization in Gatineau called Vintage Wings of Canada. And it was through that, supplying content for the website that I built for Vintage Wings that I started writing stories. I didn't really want to be a writer or a storyteller, but I ended up getting hook, line, and sinker, just dragged into it because it was so fascinating. And I always heard that I had passed this same plaque that you had passed many times and kept wondering, like, where did they land over there behind there in that space and where all that electrical stuff is. But in fact, it wasn't actually at that place. It's the nearest public building they could attach a plaque to. But it was actually north of that on the other side of Riverside, that's Slattery's field. It was a farm field, belonged to a guy named Barney Slattery, who was a local businessman in Ottawa East and a farmer. And so when Peoli came, which was in 1913, he came for the Ottawa X. And he was working for the same man, Tom Baldwin, who Lee Hammond worked for. And Lee Hammond was the first man to fly over the skies of Ottawa, and he did that in 1911, which was only 2 years after the first flight ever took place in Canada, the Silver Dart in Bedeque, Nova Scotia. 2 years later, there's a guy demonstrating, and in Bedeque, it was literally a 100-meter flight and then back down again. But 2 years later, there was a full aerial demonstration in the skies over Ottawa with this brought to you by this guy named Tom Baldwin, who was basically an aviation impresario. He, at the time, in this period that spans between when Hammond first flew, who was the pilot who worked for Tom Baldwin, the impresario, and Cecil Peoli, who was the young debutante airman who flew also for Tom Baldwin, there was no use for airplanes. They didn't carry passenger, they didn't carry cargo, they weren't used in the military. They were simply mechanical theater. That was what it was. It was kind of like a sideshow, and people wanted to see this. They'd heard about, but nobody had ever seen these people fly. So Cecil Peoli, who was actually 18 at the time, he turned 19 the next month in October, was originally only just a couple of years before had won as a teenager had won a airplane modeling contest, and he created a twin engine rubber band powered model that flew sustained flight for 1 minute and 40 seconds or something, which is
isn't that still around? Isn't that model still available?
The plans are still available on the internet, and people still build the Peoli Racer, it's called. And in fact, he's more known as the guy who invented or who designed the Peoli racer these days than he is for his early work. But Baldwin saw that this kid understood aerodynamics, kind of the principles of flight, and he was extraordinarily handsome. He was like a Ralph Lauren model, he was well dressed. He was a very good looking kid. And Baldwin said, well, that's magic. That's for him as an impresario. We'll take our airplane, the Red Devil, on a tour of the United States, the Eastern United States and the Canadian provinces, and we'll bring this kid along and he'll fly them. But the kid traveled with his mother. I mean, he may have been 18, and people were much more mature at 18, but he still brought his mother along, who frankly wasn't that much older than him. She probably had him at 18 herself, so she was in her 30s. Her name was Cassandra, and she arrived with the airplane on a train, and they brought it and assembled it at Lansdowne Park. And he was going to fly from in front of the grandstand, which is virtually where the grandstand is today. He was going to take off from there and land there, but the wind was causing some issues. So the young Peoli was actually, pretty mature. He said, I can't do it. I won't do it because it's too risky. So they packed up the airplane and moved it over to Slattery's Field, and he took off from there. But you can imagine most of Ottawa had never seen an airplane.
Wow.
They'd heard about it. They'd seen kind of black and white pictures in the newspaper, but nobody had ever seen it. And here's this kid flying out of Slattery's Field, crossing over the canal. It's only a 20-second flight, even at the slow speeds he was going, to dash in front of the Lansdowne Park to all the people who are watching at the grandstand, and then he flew over to Hintonburg, did a little turn over Hintonburg, and then flew downtown and did 3 full circuits at 3,000 feet above the Parliament buildings. And these were the old Parliament buildings. This is how long ago this was. This is before the Peace Tower. This is the old, I don't know what they call it, the Central Tower or something like that. And he made repeated flights. He took his mother up. So at one of the flights,
I read that. That's crazy. Mom.
So you can imagine how this is the absolute outer edge of technology, even though to us it's laughable now, these kites essentially. But this was leading edge stuff that was very dangerous. Yet his mother completely trusted this young kid. So at 17 or 16, he's making model airplanes. At 18, he's on a tour across Canada flying these airplanes. That's crazy. 2 months before, he flew out of a farmer's field in Lanark.
I love that he was out in Lanark.
He was out in Lanark, and he did a display in Lanark. And he was the first guy to fly in Berlin, which is now Kitchener. But he was the first guy to fly in Kitchener, the first guy to fly in St. John's, New Brunswick. So if you were to look at all the cities, his route, today he would be the first guy to have ever taken to the air in those places.
I'm just going to stick up a link to your stories about aviation, or at least the one about Cecil Peoli. So if people do want to read more, they can. So continue. Yeah.
He progressed quite well. He was well followed in the papers, as all of these aeronauts were, because they were breaking records every day. But it's really interesting, I think, to know that this was September when the X is on, or what, the X doesn't exist anymore, but it was always on in September, and late August, early September. And this was in September of 1913. And airplanes had no uses yet. A year later, World War I starts. Just a year later, actually less than a year later, it's August of 1914. And the spin up of technology and development was incredible over the next 2 years, to the point where Canadians, for instance, in Carleton Place, more than 10, there was numerous young men who wanted to join up, but because they were uneducated and in a small town in Carleton Place, they paid to go to Dayton, Ohio, to the Wright Flying School to learn to fly. And one of them is Roy Brown, the guy who was associated with the shoot down of the Red Baron. Another guy was Lloyd Bredner.
Right.
Lloyd Bredner ended up being the commander of the RCAF. There were 8 aces from Carleton Place, and that was just a couple of years later when all of this happened. It's
Wow.
extraordinary, the development. And so within a year of him flying in Ottawa, he became a little bit of a young businessman. He started his own company, his own aircraft design company, because he had some experience building models. But, you know, building a model and building an actual airplane is slightly different. But it was called the Peoli Aircraft Company or something. I forget what it was. And when he was 22, he took off in the Peoli airplane, and he didn't get more than a few hundred feet in the air, and the airplane collapsed, and he was killed with his mother there, and he was killed. This was in New York.
God damn.
And his life was short, but man, that flame burned super bright.
Yeah, that's why I wrote the song partly, I think.
Yeah. If you can hear squeaking in the background, that's my dog. Sorry.
Well,
so it's an extraordinary story about a young man with incredible courage and a really supportive mother. You know, I don't know where his father was, but
yeah,
it's really an interesting character for sure.
Yeah.
In early aviation in Ottawa.
Fascinating story, and thank you so much for sharing that, Dave. And I encourage people to. I mean, if you Google Cecil Peoli, I think you get your site, because there's not that much out there about Cecil Peoli. But again, I want to thank you, and maybe we could continue this conversation in a future broadcast about aviation in Ottawa, because it sounds like you know a lot, but I'm going to put you back in the green room for now and say thank you.
Stories. I'll send you some stories.
Send me stories. All right. That was Dave O'Malley telling us about Cecil Peoli, and quite the story, really. It's funny, when I was writing the song, you know, I knew that he died when he was 22, but I was told that sometimes too many of my songs are disasters, so I decided I wasn't going to have him die in my song. So I kept them alive and just talked about the Ottawa flights, and made this video with Andre, which we're going to show you now. I should tell you the video was recorded at Breeze Hill North Studios, and the sound recording was done by Jeff Watkins, who owns that studio. If you need to make a video, it's a great place to go. Free plug for you there, Jeff. And lots of friends helped out to get this made. We had to borrow some costumes and stuff and kind of make do with what we could find, including using my son, who does want to be an actor. So if you like his look, feel free to get in touch. We can see if we can connect you. I see people are continuing to join us. So if you did miss the beginning of this, and you want to hear the whole story, it will be posted on YouTube and on Facebook. But now we're going to move on to the video part of the show with my band that has Rob Lethbridge on upright bass and Christine Fagan singing with Camille Forget, and we were joined by drummer Kira Monfort. So that was the little band that we put together, and this is the video. Just got to make sure I hit the right button. Okay, let's take to the skies. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cecil Peoli was only a boy when he built his first plane, and no, it was a toy. He knew it would fly like a bird set free, and he told everyone someday that's gonna be me. At 17, he was an aeronaut, flying bald winds by, playing the youngest pilot. Took the world over to applause and hooray. When they asked him for some words, this is what he would say. This is what he said: hold on to your dreams, 'cause if they die, you'll be stuck down on the ground, unable to fly. So hold on to your dreams. And I
19, he was Ottawa bound. Central Canada X, the city's fairground, for a thrilling and chilling daredevil show. We're down at the stadium. Where was the boy hero? Where was he? I'll tell you. He was across the canal. The Slattery's field was Cecil could hear the stadium cheers. He tested the wind and it felt just right, so we waved at the crowd and then it took flight. Ba ba da 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 da. Cecil Peoli was only a boy when he built his first plane, and no, it was a toy. He knew it would fly like a bird set free. And he told everyone someday that's gonna be me. So hold on to your dreams, 'cause if they die, you'll be stuck down on the ground, unable to fly. So hold on to your dreams. Hold on to your dreams. Hold on to your dreams. Ba ba da 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 da. Ba ba da 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 da.
As the credits roll, Cecil Peoli leaves the building. So, Andre, you had a lot of fun with that. It's great to see. All right. So that's the video. It took me a little while to figure out what were the right buttons to hit, but I got it in the end. I'll know for the next time. And that was the Paul Weber Band playing our new video from our soon-to-be-released album called Ghost Beer Train. That's right, Ghost Beer Train. If you want to know the story of the Ghost Beer Train, you'll have to buy the album or come to a show, I guess. But we're going to be releasing one song at a time for the next few months, including this Cecil Peoli song, which will be available for purchase soon. I should mention that we do have some upcoming shows. If you want to hear the Paul Weber Band and you want to hear us play Cecil Peoli, we're going to be playing at the, I think it's the Rockcliffe Aviation people out on near the Aviation Museum on July 12th. So please come out and join us for that. If you want to know more, paulweber.ca, that's where all the information is, all the stories, all the songs. And please, if you do like what we're doing, buy me a coffee. I don't actually drink that much coffee, but I'll take your money to help make these videos and these stories. I want to thank everybody for joining us and being patient as we figured out all this stuff today. I hope to do some more of these kind of videos. Big thank you to Andre and Dave for joining me today. And I hope to have them both back in some capacity. It was fun to do this, if a little hectic sometimes. So take care, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at the next one. Up in the skies. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.